Okay, this is really dumb, but it's true. Whenever I read about Elijah, I always hear his name in my head to the tune of the old Delilah radio show jingle. You know, Elijah. I'm so sorry. Hi, I'm Justin Lee, and this is a Year of Bible, where, in addition to whatever that just was, we're reading the New Testament one chapter a day, 5 days a week. Today we're continuing our study of Paul's letter to the Romans with Romans chapter 11, featuring, you guessed it, Elijah. Let's read. I ask then, did God reject his people? Certainly not. I'm an Israelite myself, a descendant of Abraham from the tribe of Benjamin. God did not reject his people whom he foreknew. Do you not know what the scripture says about Elijah? How he appealed to God against Israel? Lord, they have killed your prophets and torn down your altars. I am the only one left, and they are seeking my life as well. And what was the divine reply to him? I have reserved for myself 7,000 men who have not bowed the knee to Baal. In the same way, at the present time there is a remnant chosen by grace. And if it is by grace, then it is no longer by works. Otherwise, grace would no longer be grace. What then? What Israel was seeking, it failed to obtain, but the elect did. The others were hardened, as it is written, God gave them a spirit of stupor, eyes that could not see and ears that could not hear, to this very day. And David says, may their table become a snare and a trap, a stumbling block and a retribution to them. May their eyes be darkened so they cannot see, and their backs be bent forever. I ask then, did they stumble so as to fall beyond recovery? Certainly not. However, because of their trespass, salvation has come to the Gentiles to make Israel jealous. But if their trespass means riches for the world, and their failure means riches for the Gentiles, how much greater riches will their fullness bring? I am speaking to you, Gentiles. Inasmuch as I am the apostle to the Gentiles, I magnify my ministry in the hope that I may provoke my own people to jealousy and save some of them. For if their rejection is the reconciliation of the world, what will their acceptance be but life from the dead? If the first part of the dough is holy, so is the whole batch. If the root is holy, so are the branches. Now, if some branches have been broken off, and you, a wild olive shoot, have been grafted in among the others to share in the nourishment of the olive root, do not boast over those branches. If you do, remember this: you do not support the root, but the root supports you. You will say then, branches were broken off so that I could be grafted in. That is correct. They were broken off because of unbelief, but you stand by faith. Do not be arrogant, but be afraid. For if God did not spare the natural branches, he will certainly not spare you either. Take notice, therefore, of the kindness and severity of God. Severity to those who fell, but kindness to you if you continue in his kindness. Otherwise you also will be cut off. And if they do not persist in unbelief, they will be grafted in, for God is able to graft them in again. For if you were cut from a wild olive tree, and contrary to nature were grafted into one that is cultivated, how much more readily will these, the natural branches, be grafted into their own olive tree? I do not want you to be ignorant of this mystery, brothers, so that you will not be conceited. A hardening in part has come to Israel, until the full number of the Gentiles has come in. And so all Israel will be saved. As it is written, the deliverer will come from Zion. He will remove godlessness from Jacob. And this is my covenant with them when I take away their sins. Regarding the gospel, they are enemies on your account. But regarding election, they are loved on account of the patriarchs. For God's gifts and his call are irrevocable. Just as you who formerly disobeyed God have now received mercy through their disobedience, so they too have now disobeyed, in order that they too may now receive mercy through the mercy shown to you. For God has consigned everyone to disobedience, so that he may have mercy on everyone. Oh, the depth of the riches of the wisdom and knowledge of God! How unsearchable are his judgments, and untraceable his ways! Who has known the mind of the Lord, or who has been his counselor? Who has first given to God that God should repay him? For from him, and through him, and to him are all things. To him be the glory forever. Amen. Yesterday, we talked about how Paul, like an Old Testament prophet, was rejected by his own people, even though he saw himself as speaking up for truth and following through on their shared beliefs. And we talked about how lonely and discouraging that role can be, and how God calls us to want good things even for those who persecute us and who oppose us. But knowing all that doesn't take away from the loneliness and discouragement, does it? Well, in today's reading, Paul offers us all some encouragement, and he gets it from the story of the Old Testament prophet, Elijah. No, I'm not singing it again. We've talked a bit about Elijah before. You remember? He was a famous Jewish prophet who found himself an enemy of the king of Israel, and an enemy of a lot of other people as well, because he spoke out against them for worshiping the Canaanite god Baal. According to the Old Testament book of 1 Kings, after the king's wife Jezebel threatened to have Elijah killed, he ran for his life, and he eventually became so depressed that he literally prayed for his own death. Did you know that? That there's a story in the Bible about one of God's most important prophets feeling so alone and so depressed that he prayed to die? Let me tell you, there are some Christians who would have you believe that if you love God, your life is always going to be rosy and perfect, and that if you have any mental health struggles, then you should feel ashamed of that. But the truth is, the Bible is filled with stories of God's people struggling, feeling scared, feeling depressed, feeling alone, and these are some of the greatest heroes of the Bible. I believe those stories are in there to encourage us and to let us know that we are not the only ones. You are not the only one who goes through these things. We're not the only ones who sometimes feel this way. So don't let anybody tell you that. Anyway, in Elisha's story, he eventually hears from God, who promises that he isn't as alone as he thinks he is. Paul quotes God here as saying, "I have reserved for myself 7,000 men who have not bowed the knee to Baal." I think Paul cites this story because he relates to Elijah. Alone, persecuted, sometimes depressed, frustrated when people won't listen. And I think he knows that there are people in his audience who know what all that's like as well. But to Paul, this message from God to Elijah is a hopeful message, not only for Elijah in his time, but for Paul and his audience in their time as well. A message that even when they feel like they're all alone and hated by their own people, that God is continuing to save people, to set them apart by grace so that they will never be alone in this journey. And it can be a comforting message to us in our time too. If you ever find yourself discouraged by the state of the world, and even perhaps the state of the church, with so many Christians following false gods, chasing power and human praise in this life while turning from the teachings of Jesus, well, if you feel that way, you are not as alone as you think you are. Not only is God with you, but God is continuing to hold on to a faithful remnant. None of this is new. It's unfortunately happened many times in history. And so Paul here has both warnings and reassurance to us all. The warning is that none of us should feel cocky and start looking down on others, taking God's grace for granted, because we're sinful too. So we should always be grateful for God's grace to us and continually strive to honor that grace by living holy lives and strengthening our faith. But the reassurance is that no one is ever beyond the reach of God's mercy. Paul gives us this image of grafting, that is, taking part of one plant and connecting it to a different plant so that it grows as part of that other plant. He says that Gentiles were grafted into a tree that wasn't originally theirs, while some people who were originally part of that tree had abandoned God and then saw their branches cut off. And doesn't that sound a lot like Jesus' parable about the king giving a wedding banquet? Remember? When many of the people on the original invite list didn't show, the king had people invited off the street who weren't on the original list. Well, Paul's making the same kind of point here with a different analogy. But he continues by saying that even those who have been cut off can see their branches grafted back in again. Because God never stops pursuing us and wanting to welcome us back into the kingdom. It's never too late. Not for you and not for anyone else. And I think that's why God keeps sending prophets. And they have a hard job, those prophets, but it's an important job. Because we are instruments and messengers of God's grace. Grace that is for everyone. In the hopes that one day, no matter what we once were, we can all be grafted into that same tree. The tree of God's love.